and Rohingyas in Rakhine State. Well, John Blaxland is a Myanmar political analyst and senior fellow at the Australian National University. He joins us via Skype from Canberra. John Blaxland, let me ask you, how significant really is this ceasefire agreement, and how hopeful are you that it perhaps could result in any kind of lasting peace in Myanmar?
Well, thank you. I do think it is quite significant. I think it follows on from President Thein Sein's plan to establish a sense of order that works for his government. This needs to be seen in the context of the roadmap that the government has, the regime prior to this government, established back in 2003. And it's about establishing an element of prosperity, which is obviously reliant on security. But that prosperity is something that is seen as being in the interests of the Tatmadaw and of the military that has backed this current government. So this is, in some respects, a cynical ploy by the government of Thein Sein, but it's also something that has some broader benefits for the community.
Yeah, I mean, it is slightly confusing, John Blaxland, because the government, did they not already sign separate ceasefires with some of the groups anyway?
Yes, they have, but they've been fighting bitter battles with those that have held out. The Kachin have experienced extraordinary hardship over the last 12 months or so. The Karen, the Mon, the Shan, others have also experienced little reported fighting that has continued over the last 12 or 18 months that have actually placed inordinate pressure on them. And there is a sense amongst a lot of those separatist groups that the reforms that have been taking place in Naypyidaw and in Burma, Myanmar, have actually taken the pressure off the government of Myanmar from making more concessions. So there's a real trepidation, there's a fear that what's been happening with the European Union lifting sanctions, the United States lifting sanctions, other countries lifting sanctions, ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, agreeing for Myanmar to chair ASEAN next year. These are all signs that the pressure is off. So these groups are quite worried.
Well, so where now does this leave the political path forward for the country, particularly with opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi and other political leaders?
Well, it's very interesting because we've got to remember that this is a country that is primarily Burman, from the ethnic group, the Burmese people. The ethnic groups that are represented in the ceasefire groups are a minority. They're looking for some concessions from the central government. The central government needs to make some concessions as well for it to maintain its credibility. Aung San Suu Kyi doesn't have a very prominent role to play in this equation. She's very prominently a Burman woman, the lady, as they call her. Her role is to some extent marginal when it comes to these ceasefire negotiations, simply because she doesn't have the gravitas, if you like, outside of the central Burman people group. So it's problematic from that point of view. But it is very interesting to think about what's going to happen here. The ceasefire we're talking about possibly happening is subject to some compromise, because the United Wa State Army and the Wa and the Shan groups are not signing up to it at this stage.
Yeah, John Blaxland, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much for talking to Al Jazeera.
Pleasure.